Let's go, I'm a bulldog.
Hello, Dog Nation, and welcome into Before the Hedges, brought to you by Kroger. I'm Kaylee Mansell with DawgNation recruiting insider Jeff Sentell. We're going to focus on a lot of positive things in this show, but we've got to start with the negative. I sat in on the Lane Kiffin post-game press conference after their win against Georgia, and one of the things that he pointed out was after they had lost in Athens by that margins and not touching Carson Beck, he said that he was going to do whatever it took to take the necessary means to be able to play them again the next year and win. And that's exactly what they did. Now that puts UGA in the same position that Ole Miss was in a year ago. How does Georgia have that Ole Miss type turnaround?
It's a good question. So, Kaylee, first of all, we're viewing subliminal happiness right now with my red and your green. Christmas is already here.
Not even on purpose.
But here's what, and I did have a point there, guys, with Christmas, and it is like Georgia's got a shopping list, and I think Georgia's shopping list, they're so quote unquote what they need to add to the program. I think they need to figure out, and I hate this, guys. I do hate this, guys, that most people think now there's no more of the Dan Jackson stories or the Jordan Davis stories or the Kamari Lassiter stories or the Javon Buller stories or all these stories. Chris Smith is a great example where you make a great evaluation, you coach them up, they get better, they get reps, and then they're just a beast. Now everybody says, and Ole Miss has set the example here with this narrative, everybody says, well, Georgia's going to have to open up the pocketbook. They're going to have to spend on receivers. They're going to have to spend on defensive linemen. I think that's the case. And I think that is the case where Georgia, you're going to have to see Georgia's 1 year turnaround is I think they're going to have to change the way they look at the wide receiver position, both in the portal and both in high school ranks. I think they've got to look at it and say, and I probably will get some amens from the chorus right here, but if the best player in the country carries a high price tag, but that's a guy that's going to make Georgia's offense go and make it like nitrous oxide in all those Fast and Furious movies. Georgia's going to have to consider the spin there. Maybe not the highest bidder on all the players, but Georgia is going to have to be more competitive. I think they've reached a point, Kaylee, to make this quick open a little bit quicker. I think they've reached a point there where they're like, we can't find those diamond in the rough receivers anymore.
Yeah.
We can't sit there and try to do it. Now, the Georgia way still works, but like this year, for instance, this team is missing a first-round defensive lineman. There's nobody in the interior of the defensive line, not counting Michael Williams, that you can say, okay, that guy's going to be a first-rounder. That's what's different about Georgia the last couple of years, and I think they've got to operate where they go into a season saying, Ole Miss had 2 or 3. Georgia needs to have more of those dudes, whatever it takes, offensively, wide receiver, running back especially. Injuries have depleted the Dogs so much where depth is a major thing, but it's also that type of NFL-type dude as well in this new era of college football.
Well, I'm glad you bring up the concept of this shopping list because a little bit later in the show, that's one of the things we're going to talk about is with signing day getting closer and closer, what are those needs that they still have in the 2025 class to make a complete one? So we'll visit that later. Why don't we show you what we've got going on today's show? Georgia returns home to Sanford Stadium for the first time in over a month. This is a huge recruiting weekend for the Dogs, both on the official side and the unofficial side. We'll show you the list that we've got, and then, like I said, we're going to let you know what does the 2025 class still need and who are the available options for them, whether they're uncommitted or already committed somewhere else. And then one thing that we talked about last week was that what Georgia has done so well has been able to recruit at the high school level, but still the way high school recruiting is fizzling out, the Dogs have been hurt by some recruiting holes. So we'll visit that later. And then lastly, we got a DawgNation conversation with the newest Georgia recruit, CJ Wiley. I'm still surprised, so I'm excited to hear what he has to say. But let's start with this. Like I said, it's been over a month since Georgia has hosted recruits. I can't think of a better game if I'm a recruit to come watch because it's do or die for both of these teams. Sanford Stadium's going to bring that atmosphere, bring that environment because there's no other choice. So if I'm a recruit, I don't care if I'm committed anywhere else in the country. This is the game I would want to be at this weekend.
This is an interesting list, Kaylee, because I know being a reporter, you always want to confirm everything. You always want to check on everything. Now, this is a list. It's a mighty good list, but this is a list that has lost a little bit of steam over the past, I guess, 24, 48 hours. The 5-star wide receiver Talon Taylor won't be there because, for a good reason, he's playing high school football. His team is still alive in the quarters when he was expected to make this trip his first home game visit of the season. Good reason he's still playing. Another 2 official visitors, Rayshawn Dinkins, he tells me, I've been told that he will not be in Athens this weekend, the recent safety commitment, because his parents can't really, his family can't all line up their schedules. So that'll be next week for Tennessee Tech. Also, the quarterback, Georgia, if you hadn't heard, Georgia really wants to add a second quarterback. Jaron Sagopute, I believe that's right. I need to hit my note cards on that one. He is going to come next week for the Tennessee Tech game as well. But that's good because I didn't know what Mike Bobo and Gummy Van Gorder and Kirby Smart were going to do with all the quarterbacks that were in town. Earlier this week, it broke. On3.com had it first, I believe, where Julian Juju Lewis was going to be in town. And that's... Just drive slow on that, DawgNation. Don't get out of school limit, speed limit right there. But I think it's interesting because what it's doing is showing that Georgia is serious about making sure any inadequacies about its offense they're trying to address to make sure the best players in the state stay in state. Of course, Julian is a 5-star. He's committed to USC. The online tea leaves have him trending hard to Colorado, not Georgia, but he's going to take a look at the Dogs, and I bet there will be a little bit of discussion there. What about asking price? What about what it will take? What about the fit? Because Georgia does need to add another quarterback for 2 reasons. Number one, they probably will lose a quarterback, likely to lose a quarterback out of their current crop to the portal. They're already going to lose Carson Beck to the NFL. And then Ryan Montgomery, the current 2024 commitment, is coming back from a knee injury. Now, he's ahead of schedule, but he's not expected to go in spring practice. I don't know if this will materialize anything, Kaylee, but I like the fact that they're bringing Julian in. It kind of shows, maybe it's great PR, it kind of shows that, hey, we need to get better on offense. We need more dudes on offense, and we're going to kind of flip over every stone possible, including a 5-star prolific high school passer in the state of Georgia, to see if there's any sort of sparks that can be kindled there.
Well, of course, anytime you bring someone that has a name as big as Juju, who is so close to this program, and even though he's been a USC commit for a while, I think everybody kind of knew that there was an opportunity that he wasn't going to go there, and he's going to take an unofficial visit this week. But why don't we show you the 2 official visitors that we have for the Georgia game in Tennessee. So Donovan Starr has recently just come up on our just off the list. He's a 4-star cornerback from Auburn who's been really struggling this year. I imagine he just wants to watch some good football, Jeff. Yeah,
it's interesting. You know, it's so funny. This is such a big weekend that we spent a couple minutes talking about, well, obviously the 5-star Juju Lewis, but we also talking about who won't make it. Now, there is still right now some indecision I'm hearing about Donovan Starr. Auburn wants him. Auburn wants him in town this weekend at Auburn. He's committed to Auburn, but Georgia is now very much in the picture, and I think it's eventuality whether Georgia gets the official visit this weekend or next weekend or the following weekend for Georgia Tech or Tennessee Tech. This other name, folks, this is a new one. This one popped out late last week where Georgia had some interest in Zach Straskowski out of Washington. He is currently a Washington commitment. He is a 4-star offensive tackle, right around number 250, 300 in the country. But here's what it says. Georgia kind of feels like they don't have enough tackles in the program. They're looking at the ones that they brought in 2024 and their development. And they're also looking at, currently you look at right now with Ernest Green III, basically mending, playing hurt, a lot of stingers he's dealing with right now. Does Georgia go get another offensive lineman in this 2024 class? They're also bringing in unofficial visitors, another JUCO offensive tackle. And that list, Kaylee, to me, gets really interesting when you start looking at the unofficial visitors as well as the 2026 class, because you know that name at the top of the list, Kaylee.
I do. Once committed to the Dogs. Same with Derek Cooper there at the bottom, who was committed to the Dogs for 4 days, I believe. But, yeah, I mean, even just looking at these first 4 names, these are your big hitters regardless of class. You've got Jared Curtis, wants a Dog, the 5-star quarterback out of Nashville, Tennessee, still wants to come and watch this game. We already talked about Julian Lewis. I'm with Jeff on this one. I'm not exactly going to hit my gas pedal as hard as I can. And then you've got another name on the list, Savion Hitter. He's a 5-star running back in the class of 2026, and I think the running back position is one where Georgia's been lacking with all the injuries. So that's a good guy to have on your list. And then the 5-star athlete, Derek Cooper out of Hollywood, Florida.
Kaylee, I was talking to my people down in Florida, and they were telling me Derek Cooper is so talented that he could go be an all-SEC safety or an all-SEC running back. He's that talented. He's rated as an athlete on one service. He's rated as a number 2 or 3 running back on another service. Savion Hyder, he's rated as the number 1 running back for 24/7 Sports. He has Georgia inside of his top 5. I think Georgia is a major contender for Savion out of Virginia. And then also, Kelly, this is big for Savion because this is his first ever game visit to UGA. Wow. So he gets to, you guys be loud. If you want to have, this is a key point. We're going to bring this up in our show, but what you do when you watch Georgia now, and some of this is a culture of a casualty of injuries. But you remember when Georgia used to roll out Nick Chubb, Sony Michel, and DeAndre Swift in the backfield, or then they had James Cook, Zamir White, and then either Kendall Milton or Dejon Edwards or Kenny McIntosh. Well, this year, due to injuries, Georgia's got Trevor Etienne. They've got a freshman in Nate Frazier, and then the third running back, who's hurt now and in a walking boot, is a walk-on. Now, that's consistent with losing Branson Robinson for now. He was their major signing in one class, and it's also consistent with losing Roderick Robinson. Think about that Ole Miss game, and think about when Trevor Etienne got banged up, and then it was almost all on the freshman's shoulders. Georgia should, barring catastrophe injuries at that position, should be able to roll in a sophomore back and a junior back to fill that. And the third back there is Cash Jones, who is a preferred walk-on, who usually only gets run in passing situations. Yeah. That's one of those things you notice with Georgia, and that's why Cooper and Hyter make so much sense. If Georgia can add those, that RBU running back room needs to look like you've got 3 or 4 home run hitters in there.
All right, we've got one more page of unofficial visitors for you guys. We'll show you that on the screen. Maybe not your big 5-star guys other than Mark Bowen. Baby Brock. Baby Brock? Oh, yeah. Okay, 2027 5-star tight end. Jeff can talk more about Baby Brock. He's out of Santa Ana, California. You've got some other names on the list. Christian Gass, the Tennessee commit, who's a 4-star linebacker. Saquon Miles, who's currently committed to Troy, another offensive tackle. It seems that Georgia is going after that position. And then somebody that we've talked about on the show before is the 2026 running back, Jay Lamar, out of Moultrie, Georgia, who's got some insane highlights.
Kaylee, I feel like we need to bring back the dogometer or the doggo-meter after our show this week to kind of catch the bounce rate or the vibes off of a lot of these guys. Mark Bowman, Kaylee, I think if Mark, they call him Baby Brock, he wears number 19. He's really good, tight, close friends with Nate Frazier. I think if he reclassified to 2026, he could still be the number 1 tight end in the country. Wow. That's how talented. Saquon Miles is obviously a JUCO player. He's out of Alabama, but he's up in Mississippi right now, and he wants to visit Georgia, and I think he's going to get an official visit maybe to come as well. Gass is a Tennessee commitment. We got to make sure we do our diligence here and inform the good DawgNation Before the Hedges viewer tonight that this isn't the complete list. This isn't the comprehensive list. These are kind of the high flyers that we've been able to confirm that really stand out to me right now.
All right, so we're going to find out who the real high flyers of high flyers are. So what we're going to show you guys, it's a projected seating chart. I love this idea. It came from Jeff. I'll give him the credit. Of course, where the recruits sit, the tunnel that the dogs run out of is what separates them. And those guys on the front row, those are the ones that are going to be the most important. So we came up with a little seating chart for you guys. We'll show it to you right here. Here we go. You've got both sides of the tunnel. The front row is the bottom. And I think your bottom row says a lot. 5-star quarterback Jared Curtis, 5-star athlete Derek Cooper. I see the trend here. You've got the uncommitted 5-stars on that front row right there.
Yeah, and I think, this is obviously, I like how Kaylee found a little graphic that makes me think of walking into the Butts-Mehre Heritage Hall right here. But for all you wedding planners out there, I'm sure we've got a few on the feed right here, and you want to figure out your seating charts. Well, I think this is something only a guy like me that covers Georgia football recruiting will know, is in the west end zone, the front row on each side can carry up to 8 seats. And then it shrinks down to 7 as you go up, and it gets smaller and smaller. But for me, you want to put those guys, and this is something that Georgia has done since Kirby Smart's been in town. The better the player, usually the better the seat they have close up to the action. I think Jared Curtis, last time he was in Athens, he was in the second row. And he was committed to Georgia at the time. And then maybe, I don't know, maybe we need to put that guy back in the front row to make sure he feels the love so far from the Georgia Bulldogs. That's what I would do. And then you got Hyder there. You got Derek Cooper there. Again, Derek was at one time committed to Georgia. I think you got to get Wiley and Montgomery up in the second row, simply because this is Ryan's first visit as a Georgia commit for a game, and he committed way back when. That's your quarterback in the class. He's moving well. I believe that knee brace is almost off now. CJ Wiley, he just committed. You want to make sure CJ feels at home. I believe last time he was in Athens, I believe he was in the second row as well. Christian Gass is the linebacker you're trying to flip from Tennessee. And also, I'd probably put the 5-star edge Isaiah Gibson in there as well. We're reserving that OV for that front row because that may be Stankuski from Portland, Oregon, or it might be Donovan Starr. The other thing to think about, there's another name that I'm trying to sort all these names. It kind of feels very much like the stock market ticker right now, but there's also, I've been told that Tavion Wallace, the Arkansas commitment down at Appling County, also plans to be in Athens this weekend. That's a tentative plan, but he told me last time I spoke to him he was likely going to make it. So if Tavion, a flip, top 120 overall linebacker in the country that's hitting 121, 22 miles per hour on his GPS, if he makes it, we're going to have to rearrange, Kaylee, because, we've got a little bit of flexibility there because it's not just the player. It's mom and dad, sister, girlfriend, brother, or whatever. Nobody really gets a full row. The only time I've ever seen a prospect get a full row was David Sanders a year ago when he brought in his mom and dad and his 3 sisters as well. So something to look for there. I think it's very interesting. We're trying to present this information to you a little bit differently, and we can tell you who the top guys are, but we're trying to tell you, hey, Georgia wants to seat the very best players up front. Hierarchy need a good win rate out of this visit, and that's what we try to do there.
I also like the concept of CJ Wiley sitting right behind Jared Curtis so he can lean over and be like, come on, man, think about all the touchdown passes that you can throw me for 1 year, 2 years. I like that CJ Wiley's kind of sandwiched in between those quarterbacks. Also, it's just crazy how time flies because I feel like, it feels like it's been 2 days since I was with you on signing day last year, and now we're less than a month away, and we'll have an answer to all of these names that we've been talking about. DawgNation, this is our Before the Hedges countdown to signing day, brought to you by Kroger.
This is DawgNation's countdown to signing day, brought to you by Kroger.
You love to see it, honestly, because there's just so much that can happen between now and then. And I think about the KJ Bolden flip, that happening on signing day. And we kind of had an inkling, but it was also one of those things like you really had no clue. And with this new era of college football and recruiting, it's like anything can happen, whether they're committed somewhere or they're not. And so we're getting to that time. So we're going to talk about some of the things that the 2025 class still needs. And I think that starts with the defensive line. You lose a defensive line in Stephon Shivers. Now you only have 2 in the class. Yes, you might get Justice Terry, but I don't really think you can bank on that. Who are some of those other options that Georgia can go out and get to fulfill what they need? Because you can't have too many defensive linemen at this point.
Yeah, Kaylee, when I tried to explain recruiting to folks, I had, especially this time of year, and everybody has that funny line where they say, recruiting is fluid. Well, and a lot of people pop up their social media memes, GIF, whatever you want to call it. And my version of fluid is when I was a little kid, we're all little kids at one point, right? You take that big rock and you throw it into the pond, you throw it into the lake, and all the ripples that shoot out of that, that's what recruiting is like right now. For instance, last year, Dylan Raiola flips to Nebraska. Well, that creates a little bit more need for Georgia to maybe go after a guy like KJ Bolden. I also think it creates more NIL collective efforts to go after a guy like KJ Bolden. But with defensive line, Kaylee, they're going to lose a lot. They could lose Terry Mingham Dawkins. They could lose Michael Williams. They can lose. They're going to lose Nazir Stackhouse. They're going to lose Warren Brinson. So maybe Christian Miller also portals, or maybe he's one of those running back guys. So that's already 5 names that you could lose off your defensive line. I think Georgia will try to replace some of that veteran might with the transfer portal. But I also think they have to do it with the 2025 signing class. You've lost your zero tech in Stephon Shivers. He decommitted formally last week. And then you've just got J.J. Hane, kind of a project defensive lineman who's only been playing for 2 years. And then you've got the superstar, 5-star, #1 defensive tackle in the country, Elijah Griffin. They're going to have to go hard remaining D tackles in this class. You got Justice Terry, the number 2 defensive tackle in the class. Yeah, that'd be great. But if you're a Georgia defensive line coach like Trey Scott, give me more. Is it flipping Kevin Wynn from Florida State? You're hearing a lot of South Carolina and USC back and forth right there now with Kevin Wynn. Again, we've told you his story on Before the Hedges. He wants to be a chef. He wants to own his own restaurant one day. So if you're not talking into how he can seat some tables and have a lot of customers per hour and how to run a restaurant and how to set up his staff, kind of like that great show we see on, I believe Hulu is where I watch it, The Bear, and how to run a 5-star restaurant, and Kevin Wynn, he's not listening. You've also got keeping going on down the line. Georgia is in the mix with so many defensive tackles in the state. There's Braxton Hicks. There's Josiah Victor, who was committed to Boston College, who just decommitted. There's Christian Ingram out of Newton High School in Covington. So you've got to expect Georgia's eventual defensive line group in this 2025 class to probably go up to 6, 7, 8 names. We're going to lump in Chase Linton in there as well because he's an edge guy, a defensive end guy. You've got Isaiah Gibson there as well that's going to play on the edge, but another defensive line, 5-tech type right there. But for Georgia, defensive line, that is the biggest remaining piece of the jigsaw puzzle right now for their 2025 class. Only 2 DLs. I think that number Georgia should sign and needs to sign about 4 or 5 more for that position.
I've got one follow-up, and we'll make it quick because it's pretty simple, but I think about something that you said earlier in the show, how Georgia, apart from Michael, doesn't currently have that first-round defensive line type guy. If Georgia were to go out and get one of those, is it somebody from the high school level or somebody from the portal?
Well, I think Justice Terry and Elijah Griffin are both first-round type guys, but we listen to the words, we hearken the words of Kirby Smart really strongly here when he says you're not supposed to be able to play as a freshman in the middle, in the trenches. It is a grown man league, and I don't care how good you are at 17, 18. When you're mixing it up with 21 and 22, you're going to lose that battle. I think Elijah Griffin is that type of special player that can get some early run. I think Terry can as well to some extent, especially if he plays a little bit on closer towards the edge. I think Georgia's got to go find a Walter Nolan. I think they've got to go find the zero tech. Remember they flirted with Deion Walker out of Kentucky a year ago? I think Georgia needs to go find a guy like that. When you sign him and when you pull him out of the portal, kind of whatever it takes, that's a guy that you know is already NFL bound. He just needs that extra year before he is draft eligible. I think that's what they need. Listen, Georgia's front is always the best when it has a true zero tech nose, a guy that can soak up the blocks in A gap, maybe B gap, and let those linebackers come downhill. I think you just can't do that in the high school ranks these days. And as Ole Miss proved, they took a pass rusher from Florida. They took the Texas A&M former 5-star in the 2022 class, and they were ready to roll with a ready-made front built to beat Georgia.
So it looks like Georgia is going to try and add one more offensive lineman to this class, and I feel like that sense of urgency has come with what we've seen over the last couple weeks, and not just about the offensive line's performance, but their inability to stay healthy and how they need more bodies. So I'm not surprised they want to go after one more offensive line. Who do you think's that top target for them?
I think it's Saquon Miles, but this young man, Stankuski, coming out of Portland will be interesting. He's a Washington commitment. He's about 6'6". He's about 270, 275, 280. He's a little light.
The Georgia mold.
Little light there in his britches, I guess. Georgia would probably like to see him like 295, 305, 315. But Kaylee, for me, I think Georgia's looking to see what they have. Marcus Harrison, who was very talented, signed last year, has been hurt most of his freshman year. Kaylee, then you also have Jamal Merriweather. Again, he redshirted. Bo Hughley. Both of those guys are progressing well, but they're not that 310, 325, monster tackle. I mean, another thing, I said the same point about the defensive line. Kaylee, you look across Georgia's offensive front right now, and there's not a first-round offensive tackle. Or first-round offensive lineman. The Dogs have been spoiled in the years past with Broderick Jones, Andrew Thomas, Amarius Mims, on and on and on. Like, they need one of those quote-unquote dudes up front as well, and that's what they got to try to find.
So, it's no secret. We've talked about it on the show today. Georgia is wanting to add one more quarterback in the class of 2025. Ryan Montgomery has been a part of this class for a while, but he's been hurt all season long. I can understand this need to feel like you have to go out and get one more person. I don't think that's Juju Lewis, somebody that we'll talk about a little bit later. It looks like currently committed to Cal.
Yeah, that's Jerron out of, first of all, we've never done this on Hedges, a young man from Iwa Beach, Hawaii.
Yeah.
He's from Hawaii. And Kaylee, he's currently committed to Cal, but Dan Lanning and the Ducks are flirting really hard. They got him in town for his official visit last weekend. He's now backed up his official visit to Georgia. It was this week. Now it's next week for Tennessee Tech. You know, best believe he's going to get one of those front row seats in your seating chart for Tennessee Tech. But he's a guy that's currently committed to Cal. Kaylee, I saw him out in California at the Elite 11. Major arm. He won the rail shot challenge. The rail shot challenge is where you throw basically the 9 route. There can be no floating. There can be no arc to the ball. And you really want that rail shot to go up the sideline, and you want it to cover about 30, 35 yards, and you want your receiver to catch it on a line right on the goal line. And I'm going to tell you, this young man was going toe-to-toe with Dylan Gabriel, a guy that's been in college for 6,000 years, the current Oregon quarterback. And they went through 8 or 9 reps, and finally Dylan just tapped out and let the young man have it. Let the young man enjoy his moment. But big arm, Kaylee. Georgia also recently offered Camario Taylor out of Mississippi. He is the number 11 quarterback in the country, and he is committed to Mississippi State. Dual threat quarterback. It remains to be seen whether he'll visit Georgia. But again, we talked earlier about Georgia's trying to flip over every stone in order to add playmaking, in order to add a dual threat element to the class. That's what they're trying to do now. Camario, number 11 quarterback in the country, still sounds very firmly committed to Mississippi State. They feel like that will stick. I feel like Georgia's efforts, while they are noble, they maybe should have done those about 2 or 3 months ago. Because, you know, you're learning right now when you come in late, sometimes not even the Georgia brand is enough to make people think, yeah, I've got to go in another direction here because the prettiest girl in town now wants to go out with me. And then we're seeing that a lot. Now, Georgia's brand can carry that. They can get that with a lot of guys at a lot of positions. But I think a quarterback's a little different.
All right, last thing, they're going to have to go into the portal to get some positions. I think for me, one of the big ones that stands out is safety because you're going to lose Malachi Starks, you're going to lose Ian Jackson. Yes, KJ Bolden's going to move up, but that's still only going to be a true sophomore. I think you have to go get a safety out of the portal, maybe one more wide receiver. I don't care that Georgia has 5 signed in the 2025 class. I think you need at least maybe 1 more, maybe 2 more, and then you got to have some at the defensive line position. I
think you're absolutely right, Kaylee. I think what Georgia needs to do is they need to treat it like they've treated. And we'll have a discussion about this, the reason why, later in our show. But Georgia's offensive recruiting at the wide receiver position, that's forced their hand where they've had to go to the portal. I mean, guys, imagine this. And I know it's football. It is what it is. Some stupid decisions off the field were made. But imagine Carson Beck's offense this year when you had a Colby Young, a true X receiver, and then a Ra Thomas, another true X receiver. Both of those guys have NFL potential. They're big bodies. The offense looks a little bit different. Like you see a lot of the national folks pointing out, I think Todd McShay did this week about, listen, Georgia doesn't have any NFL receivers right now on their roster, at least any kind of like game breakers. There's no Ladd McConkey. There's no, obviously, George Pickens, but like they don't have that guy. And, you know, Georgia's tried to be aggressive in the portal, but I think they went to go find those bronze medal or silver medal starters that are in college football. They need to do a pull and move, kind of like what Texas did a couple years ago when they came and got A.D. Mitchell away from Georgia and brought them into their lineup. I think that's the move Georgia's going to have to make. Instead of a Dominic Lovett, instead of a London Humphreys, instead of a Michael Jackson, instead of, you know, the Colby Youngs, I think Georgia needs to go find a guy that is absolutely doing damage in college football. And they need to say, you know what? Come do this for the University of Georgia.
So I think in these last few games, one of the things that we've recognized is that there have maybe been some gaps in the last 3 years of recruiting. So in just a minute, we're going to touch more on that. But we want to remind you that our signing day coverage and Before the Hedges is brought to you by Kroger. And with Thanksgiving approaching, make sure to check out Kroger.com/promotions because they're going to do 9 days of savings on all of your Thanksgiving favorites. So check out Kroger.com/promotion so you can see all the weekly deals, the holiday hours, and the special savings that will make your feast extra special. All right. There were a few position groups that were exposed at Ole Miss, and I feel like there's been a little bit of that in every game. Not a lot of consistency on the board. It's like you talk about Georgia's so elite at recruiting. They're so good at recruiting at the high school level, but in this new age of college football, you can't retain everyone. So we wanted to put up something for you guys that kind of shows that the positions that are struggling, it correlates with what's happened over the last 3 years. We're going to call this Where the Dog's At, and this is what it means. So on the left side, that first number is how many are remaining, and then on the right side is how many they started with. So they started with 1 running back in the class of 2021. Now they're down to 0. And if you see an asterisk, like you see in that 2022 running back column, that means that the 1 running back that's still at Georgia is injured. So you see that with the 2022 running back would be Branson Robinson. The 2023 running back would be Roderick Robinson. And that 2023 wide receiver, that would be Anthony Evans. And I feel like when you look at it, it all makes sense, Jeff.
I mean, so I made this point earlier, and this is what's very important. Let's just start with wide receiver. If you do the math, and I thought you did a great job of explaining our graphology here right now, but you look at that, Georgia has signed 9 receivers, and we're not counting the 2024s because we get it. Those are freshmen, even though Sokovia White and Nitro Tuggle, very talented. Out of the last 9 receivers that Georgia has signed in 2021, 22, and 2020, this is out of the high school ranks. They currently have 3 out of those 9 available, and really it's 2 out of the 9 because Anthony Evans has been hurt the last couple of weeks. Kaylee, I am so stubborn about this. Everybody thinks Georgia needs to get the 5-star quarterback or whatever. Folks, those are costly, especially in this era. I am of the belief that you can get a very high floor quarterback, a quarterback that, top 100, top 150, like they have with Ryan Montgomery, like they maybe had with Jake Fromm, and like what they currently have with Carson Beck. But you can fix that. Now, I don't mean fix that, but that high floor quarterback at a place like Georgia with Georgia's elite defense, if you surround them with the dudes at wide receiver. I call them skyrockets, those guys that are just so explosive that you can win with excellent receivers. And Georgia, look at that graphic. They've had to go to the portal because only 2 of the last 9 high school receivers they've signed are still with the program. And, a guy like Tyler Williams, he was supposed to be the biggest recruit in the class of 2023. He didn't work out. He was a BMAC guy. Now he's at Minnesota. You keep going on and on. Georgia got a lot of guys that they thought, well, maybe they can play. Maybe we can find another Ladd McConkey. Maybe we can find another Dylan Bell. In some ways, Georgia is remarkable that they did hit on Dylan Bell in the 2022 class. Otherwise, that high school recruiting at wide receiver would look like a desert. Now, we must say this. James Coley is back in town. He is an ace recruiter, and Georgia is fixing that at wide receiver. Talon Taylor, number 29 in the country. CJ Wiley, number 84 in the country. The 2025 class is so stacked at wide receiver that you've got a guy with 4.3 speed and superhero ball skills in Landon Roldan that David Pollock described him. And he's a guy that, is maybe the 3rd or 4th wide receiver you mentioned in the class. Kaylee, again, the same thing applies for offensive linemen right there. Look at that 2022 class. Only 2 out of 5. Georgia is quite fortunate that Dylan Fairchild, Micah Morris, and Jared Wilson have stuck around and really gotten their first playing time this season, real serious starting wire-to-wire playing time this season. Otherwise, their offensive line recruiting of the last 2 cycles, not very good. Same thing that we've already mentioned, the running back position, Kaylee. That's why when Georgia takes injuries and with Carson Beck, you're looking around and you're like, hey, where are the guards at? Or where are my open receivers at with separation? This is a reason why, even though Georgia has elite recruiting on the offensive side, whether it's a combination of not the right evals, because not everybody can be a Dylan Bell or an A.D. Mitchell or a Ladd McConkey, or just retention, trying to keep guys around. That's how depleted Georgia is right now.
I'll say one thing about this, and it's specific to the running back position. Look at the situation that Georgia's in now. You had to bring in Trevor Etienne from the portal. Everybody's hurt. You're having to play a true freshman and Cash Jones. And the thing is this is not the first time it's been a problem. It was a problem with last year, too. And in 2 of those 3 years, they only brought in 1 running back. I think that you need to sign at least 2 in every class so it doesn't put you in the same position that you've been in, not just this year, but last year, too. And that's why the run game has been down.
And Kaylee, Georgia's smart. And why I say this is smart is they know They know they messed up. That's why they signed, I believe, 5 offensive linemen, 6 offensive linemen in 2024, and they're going to try and sign that many in 2025. The same thing in running backs. Kaylee, they signed 3 running backs last year. They might sign 3 if they can get Anthony Turbo Rogers to flip from Alabama this year. So they realize it's not getting it done. They have to change their course a little bit. I'm going to reiterate. You see Trevor Etienne there, man. Great find. You got to go find another one like that. If he doesn't come back out of the portal, because, listen, Georgia football to me has always been, like I said before, DeAndre Swift is your 3 guy behind Chubb and behind Michelle. And then when DeAndre moved up, you had guys like James Cook and Zamir White behind him. And when DeAndre moved on, you had Kenny McIntosh, Dejon Edwards, Kenny Milton behind them. Right now, the running back room is depleted along with lots of other areas on the offense. And when Kirby Smart talks about we don't have depth, I don't have depth anywhere, nobody has depth. This is a reason why.
Okay, well, one thing that you did mention is when you look at the slide there, one of the saddest parts about it is the wide receivers, specifically 2020. I mean, really from the last 4 years. Well, UGA heard your concerns because now they are doubling down, quadrupling down. Actually, quintupling down, is that the right term?
That's the right term.
Yeah, on wide receivers in the 2025 class. Our very own Jeff Sentell got a chance to sit down with the latest one, a huge in-state pickup. Here is a DawgNation conversation with UGA wide receiver CJ Wiley.
You decommitted from Florida State right after your Texas A&M visit. Were you already thinking Georgia then? What was going through your mind at that point?
So I just made like a decision for myself, decommitted from Florida State. I took a visit to Texas A&M, got to see them play versus LSU, and I was just really just rethinking what I should do and what's best for me. So,
what were you thinking coming out of that visit? Most people thought you were thinking Texas A&M because it was reactionary, but I don't know if that was the case. What was really going on?
Like I said, I wasn't really thinking nobody. I just want to like revise and like just rethink. So it was really between Texas A&M, Georgia, and LSU.
Now, are you done? Are you absolutely done?
Yes, sir.
Have you? Are you going to take any more visits? Are you going to see Georgia again, or?
Yeah, I'm gonna be at the Georgia versus Tennessee.
You going to be at that game?
Yes, sir.
CJ, when did you know? Like, what did it come down to? Like, were you thinking 3 days ago that it was going to be Georgia, or did this kind of just pop a lot sooner than that?
I would say last week I knew it was going to be Georgia, but yesterday I made it official. I talked to the coaches last night, so.
Why were you thinking Georgia? What was the spark behind all that?
I would say I can see myself playing there. It was the best fit for me. I got a good connection with my OC, Coach Bobo, and my receiver coach, Coach Cooley. So.
What was the reaction of the Georgia coaches?
They were excited. It was like a big excitement on the phone.
Who did you tell first? Did you tell Cooley
Coach
first?
Smart.
You told Coach Smart? What did Kirby say?
What I said, I think I said, I was like asking him how he's doing, all that. I was like, Coach, I just want to tell you I'm coming home. Yeah, I'm gonna be a dog. And he just got excited.
You just dropped it just like that, right?
Yes, sir.
Just a regular phone call, and you just waited for a pause, and then you're like,
yes, sir.
What did Kirby do?
I'm not sure. I know he said something loud. I forgot.
Did he yell, or did he go,
Yes,
heck
sir.
yeah?
Like he went like, yeah, one of them.
Yeah, he said, heck yeah?
Yes, sir.
That's the biggest reason why. That's funny. I talked to Terrence last night. Terrence is like, man, he didn't even tell me.
Yeah, look, because I was not thinking about Coach Terrence. I was just like, let me call these coaches, just get it over with. I should have told Coach Terrence because he played receiver. And like he one of my coaches that I've been like training with and stuff. So
CJ, I've interviewed you maybe 5-6 times now. This is the most relaxed I've ever seen you, man. What's the reason? Am I just catching you at a good time, or you feel like a big weight's off your shoulders right now?
I'll say both of that. I feel like I'm just relaxed now. Everything's done.
When you visited Georgia for the last, I guess it was at Auburn or was it Mississippi State? It's the day you had the SAT, right?
Oh yeah, it was Auburn.
Auburn. Are you looking in that stadium already thinking like maybe? Like, did that visit help, or what really kind of changed your mind? You know, Coach Coley likes to say change the game a lot. What kind of changed your mind about Georgia here?
Yeah, I would say the stadium. I looked in the stadium. I said I can see myself playing here. The atmosphere was good. A lot of the coaches greeted me. Some of the players greeted me too. I got to speak with some of the players after the game and told them congrats on the win and stuff. So,
was that helpful just to talk to the guys on the team? Did they welcome you in?
Yes, sir.
Now, I remember we were in this room and you chose Florida State. I remember your mom telling me that she didn't know, your dad didn't know. Did they know this time? Did you let them know what's up?
Oh, yes, sir. I gave them, like I said last week, I said I wanted to be at Georgia last week, so they knew.
What type of player are the Bulldogs going to get here in you?
A hard worker, a team player, and a player that's like looking ready to work and just trying to get the win, help my team out any way as possible.
I got to ask about Ethan. Did he say anything funny when he finally knew? Did he just smile at you? You guys are going to end up playing together for like, what, 8 straight years, 9 straight years? And what's...
Yes, sir. Oh, yeah, because after our committee, he made like he made a post. He put a picture from us in middle school. Then I think it was middle school. Oh, he put us middle school, and it was like us at a Georgia visit together in the uniform, and then a high school picture.
How old were you guys in middle school when you first started playing together?
8th grade.
So that was the first time you started playing together, 8th grade?
Yes, sir.
So 8th grade. And then you guys were separate as a junior.
10th, and 12th.
And now 3 or 4 more years at
Yes,
Georgia.
sir.
How big of a role did Coach Coley play here?
He plays a big role. Since I've committed to Florida State, he's just been on me, just texting me, checking up on me, and some more of the staff has been doing that too as well. So they've just been solid all throughout.
Just relentless, right? Was there ever a point where Georgia didn't make you feel like you were wanted and needed and everything else like that?
No, sir.
The one thing that sticks out to me, and it kind of ties all back in with what we've been discussing this entire show, is he said that he believes that he can play as a freshman. I feel like that's something you're not going to say out loud unless it's already been told to you.
He probably needs to play as a freshman, Kaylee, considering he's going to be an ex-receiver. And, you know, this is what it is. You know, CJ Wiley has been trained by the guru, the GOAT, Terrence Edwards, #TEWR Academy. And he's 6'4", 205. He runs a 10.7 in the 100. He's a 4.4 guy. Dad played in the NFL. Mom was also an SEC athlete at LSU with his dad. Checks a lot of the boxes. But here's the reason why I think he can play quickly at Georgia is because work ethic is there, the ability is there, but like he's reached the point, Kaylee, now at Milton where I heard some rumblings, you know, over this year when, let's face it, Georgia fans were trying to be accepting of him going away to Florida State. And they're like, well, you know, blah, blah, blah. He's not showing up in the biggest games. Well, there's some smart football coaches at Milton, and what they do is they tell their quarterback, you're going to get fired if you throw it into double coverage, especially when you've got weapons all around. You've got an Auburn receiver / tight end. You've got Ethan Barbour going to Georgia. You've got a running back with over 1,000 yards going to, I believe, Western Kentucky. So, like, and then the quarterback, Luke Nichols, going to Miami. But, like, at a place like Georgia, what he's seen almost the whole year, Kaylee, Terrence even looked at the film. He told me about it. Is he said he's seen a safety high over the top all the time. Mm-hmm. And it takes a guy out of the box in the run game, makes the whole offense better. But you won't be able to do that at Georgia when maybe there's, you know, Lawson Lucky or Elias Williams at tight end. And then on the other side now there's Talon Taylor. And then you've got to respect like a Nate Frazier or maybe another year of Trevor Etienne at running back behind you. Like you won't be able to kind of cover him up and scheme his way out of it right there. And I think that's what I know gets CJ Wiley excited. Mm-hmm. Kaylee, he's reached the point where people were saying that, and I think CJ has only he's missed like four games he's been done at the half. Mm-hmm. So he's played 5 full games this year. He has about 700 yards receiving and I believe 8 touchdowns. And that's considered a down year or not a big year because, of course, he had 15 touchdowns a year ago. I believe it was 14 and almost 1,500 yards and 70 catches. So this is the point now where CJ is going to play a lot of 4-quarter games and you're going to see those numbers spike. Again, the fit he has at Georgia and then the fit Georgia wants with him, They just need those upper echelon, as talented as it gets, receivers, and they haven't gotten a lot of guys like CJ Wiley lately.
CJ Wiley, Ethan Barbour, a variety of other commits. They'll all be starting their run to a state championship starting this week. Georgia high school football playoffs begins, and because of that, last week was a bye week, so a lot of guys didn't play, but we do have some Mansell's details for you guys. Let's start with JJ Hane, the defensive lineman, had 3 tackles, 1.5 sacks, and what you're going to see here is that major sack, and then this next one, it's pretty impressive. He caught a pass for a 2-point conversion.
See, this is what they come to the deets for, Kaylee, right here. The deets, look at this. Falling into your living room, falling into your lap. Kaylee, you want to hear some intel on this? You want to hear some stats on this one? This wasn't his first one of the year. He's caught 2 2-point conversions this year. First of all, nobody's covering the big fella on a 2-point conversion on an extra point. Again, this young man has only been playing football for about 2 years, native of Germany, so Georgia got the #1 player out of Germany in this recruiting class as well. But he's a guy, Kaylee. Believe me on this. Give him about 2 years of Sinclair, give him about 3 years of Trey Scott, and he has those raw ingredients, the raw metrics, those intangibles, the athletic ability, the way he moves, soccer background, of course, the way he moves, he could be a first-round pick.
The next person we're about to show you might also be a future first-round pick, and that's going to be Talon Taylor, who was our dog of the month last week, and he's in the midst of the playoffs as well. There's been no slowing down for Talon Taylor.
Of course, it's Talon being talented. Again, there's 3 guys chasing him. You know, we had some internal discussions on the Mansell's Details LLC about this, and it's reaching the point. Now, listen, there's only about 5 Georgia commits that played last week, 6 Georgia commits that played last week, but Talon Taylor, again, does it every week.
And I feel like every time we see a highlight of his, it's 3 guys chasing him, and not trying to take away from what Talon did, but with few recruits playing, once again, you guessed it, our dog of the week is Talon Taylor.
I'm a big dog, no leash, you all bark, no teeth. That's a whole lot of wins on me. That's a whole lot of wins on me.
So our Talon Taylor Award, Talon Taylor Weekly Award, goes to Talon Taylor, 5-star wide receiver out of Geneva, Illinois. 7 receptions for 123 yards and a touchdown. That's the one that you just saw. And, I mean, talk about someone who is so special on the special teams. I think this is back-to-back weeks where he's had a kickoff return for a touchdown and then a 42-28 playoff victory, quarterfinals.
Yeah, like you said, Kaylee, what was that? The intro, the great Cody Chafin's graphic.
Yeah.
A whole lot of wins on me. That's a whole lot of wins on Talon Taylor. We're going to have to look at the scoreboard at the end of the year. We've had some internal discussions at Mansell's Details LLC. Of course, I'm just the vice president. I'm not the CEO like Miss Mansell here, but we're seriously thinking about calling this the Talon Taylor Award, and sometimes we'll hand it to another Georgia commitment. But right there, something to think about here. He's still alive in the quarterfinals of the Illinois State playoffs. His family had circled the Tennessee game. That was the date that they were going to come down and visit Georgia. First game as a Georgia commit. He was going to get one of those front row seats, but hey, they're still playing. Geneva plays at 1 o'clock Central Time on Saturday, and Talon's pretty fast. Mm-hmm. He's not that fast to get to Athens for a 7 o'clock kick in Georgia. So he won't be able to make that game. They'll try to get down for maybe a Georgia Tech game. Depends on if they keep winning. Geneva and the state of Illinois plays all their high school state playoff games on Saturdays, which is kind of wild. Thank goodness we don't do that in Georgia, because they know what SEC football is like in Georgia. Nobody be going to see those Georgia GHSA state playoff games except mamas and daddies and aunts and uncles, because they got SEC football to watch.
All right, Talon Taylor, once again, you are our dog of the week. Now it's question of the week time. Make sure you tell us in the comments. Question of the week this week, with Georgia returning back to Sanford Stadium, what is your go-to concession stand order at Sanford? I don't really get the chance to eat out the concession stands that much, but like just across the board, I've always been kind of like I need some sort of carbonation and then like a sweet and a salty.
Well, first of all, this is a homecoming week in some ways because Georgia hadn't been there since forever. And I don't really know what the concession stand are anymore. I hear some of those McGill Club members can get milkshakes and Chick-fil-A's or whatever in their little club section suite that they pay additional for. But I do know this. When you're a sideline photographer at all these SEC stadiums, which resemble cathedrals, you're a little bit of a second-class citizen. Like, we'll be getting like some box lunches that on the field level, if anything. Meanwhile, the southern elites up there in the press box, the working media, the beat writers, the scribes, the TV anchors, they're chowing down on some brisket or some lemon pepper chicken wings or something like that. So I don't know. You good people of Before the Hedges, inform me about what's your go-to concession order in Sanford.
Just know I have never had a lemon pepper chicken wing at any stadium, so quit with that. Let's go ahead and get into our weekly staples, our class breakdown. We've got a new name on the offense. I had to expand the wide receiver category. Now 5. It was 3. Now it's 5. I mean, it just keeps going and keeps going and keeps going. And Thomas Blackshear, no more. He is closed his recruitment again. So nice to finally see CJ Wiley on that offensive breakdown. Now to the defensive side of the ball, Stephon Shivers comes off the defensive line, but Georgia will be looking to add more to that list. And then, of course, some new names on that list that, still getting familiar with the 3-star linebacker A.J. Cruwa and the 4-star safety Rashawn Deakins. Both flips. Now let's go to our arguably the most gorgeous slide. So you stay with 24 commits. You stay at number 3 with the potential to go up. And then you add another in-state commit. And one of the things that's cool about with CJ Wiley being a top 100 guy, all those numbers go up. Top 100, top 150, top 200, offensive players among the 10 highest rated commits. That all goes up because they add someone like CJ Wiley who has so much talent. All right, now let's look at our top targets. No new names on the list for this week. Christian Gass will be visiting Sanford as well as Donovan Starr. So maybe those names move up next week.
Yeah, Starr, there's, like we said at the top of our show, there's some indecision right now whether he will be back at Auburn. They're trying to hang on to him for dear life, and then he'll come hang out with the masses for Georgia, Tennessee, college game day. Seems like a pretty interesting decision or curious decision if he decides to go back to Jordan Hare. And then on the other side, these are kind of the guys that everybody circled as what finishes out the class.
Yeah, and then we've got one more page for you. You've got Justice Terry, who's going to decide on signing day. 4-star edge Chase Linton has been there for a while. You mentioned him earlier. And then Kevin Wynn is somebody that's really interesting to me, and not just because with FSU being down this year, they've lost so many recruits. But, I mean, this is an in-state guy. Georgia needs another defensive lineman. I feel like this would be a huge get for Georgia, considering all the other people that are going after him right now.
Yeah, Chase Linton, quickly, November 20th, he makes his decision next Wednesday, a week from now at North Atlanta High School. Another name that we needed to make sure we include with all of our D-line roundup we had earlier in the show, Jeremiah McLeod has set his official visit for next weekend for the Tennessee Tech game. Of course, he just visited Florida State. I believe he's going to get back to Florida this weekend, and then obviously he's going to check out Georgia. There's some really strong vibes right now with Georgia and Jeremiah McLeod out of Lee County. That's the teammate of Usman Kroma as well.
All right, now let's look at our just off the list. I believe we've got 2 new names. A 4-star wide receiver. Is that what you were talking about? We have to make room for maybe potentially one more?
Yeah, and it's funny. We're going to have a separate season for, I guess, portal season or whatever. But
oh, yeah.
Romero Ison is still, it's kind of back and forth the information I'm getting on whether he will be in town for Georgia this weekend. He's currently committed to USC. He's out of Maryland. You see Saquon Miles. He's expected to be in town going forward as well.
All right, we've got one more with that big name we were talking about earlier. When I say big name, I mean like big name in the recruiting world, but also just like a really big name. I'm not even going to try to give it a shot. But he's a 4-star quarterback committed to Cal. Georgia wants to add another quarterback in the 2025 class, and the puzzle pieces are falling in place. They have one visiting this week, Jeff.
So, Kaylee, I'm going to test you because I know you're good. You got the skills. Not trying to put you on the spot, but I believe in you. What if you were the play-by-play announcer and Jerron played wide receiver for Tennessee, and you had to call a touchdown pass from Nico
Iamaleava
to Jerron Juran Kiwa Sagapulutele. That would be tough.
Yeah.
That would be tough. Again, and we talked about him. Folks, I'll be honest. I don't know if Georgia can beat out Oregon because Oregon has a lot of program pedigree. They've got a great history. Marcus Mariota at quarterback at Oregon with Polynesian players from Hawaii. Mariota won a Heisman at Oregon, and it also is a lot closer to his home in Hawaii than Georgia. But the Dogs are, like I said earlier, the Dogs are going to swing for the fences. They're going to tee that sucker up and let it fly. Really interesting to see. Again, we mentioned Victor earlier at Grayson High School, just decommitted from Boston College.
All right, DawgNation, that is our just off the list. And we thank you so much for joining us tonight on Before the Hedges, brought to you by Kroger. In the weeks to come, we'll have more things on signing day. With that, I'm Kaylee Mansell with Jeff Sentell. We'll see you right back here next Wednesday at 7 o'clock.
Let's go, I'm a bulldog. So Georgia, who I'm picking. I love the family atmosphere and the way they handle business. Education is important, trying to reach the next level. I want